There we go. And time for arms. So I always can, I guess I kind of, no, I'm not considering. Definitely going to do private lift for this one. Partially for added focus of being in the gym solo, but also because it's going to be a little easier for me to really kind of end up doing like a good quick pace back and forth tricep movement, bicep movement set. That's not true either. Last arm day I had a lot of success doing biceps first, finishing with triceps. So I think I might just end up doing that again for today. I'll have to decide. Part of that, as much as I can guess, and as much as I can bring that up now, pre-lift, before actually going into the gym and feeling everything and warming up and doing curls or whatever, part of it I just have to wait until I'm in there, and that'll decide whether or not things end up feeling just like how I'm expecting, or if I need to make a tweak, right? If my elbows end up being extra tender, more than I would predict, I'm probably not going to need to do crazy heavy pushdowns, nor would I. Same thing if my forearm was felt in the way, but if for whatever reason warming up, usually I can tell, like, it's like when you pick up a 45 off the rack, you have a little bit of a gauge of like, this feels light today, I'm feeling strong, this is sick, or ooh, this feels a little extra heavy today. So in the process of warming up and just doing like 10, 20, 50, whatever pound single arm pushdowns, that's my way of gauging it. That's my way of being able to say, it's like, okay, this feels pretty good today. I'm going to make use of this feeling by maybe leveraging a little bit more heavier bruncher sets than I might normally, rather than just do lighter squeezing sets or, any kind of combination either way, right? There's days for sprints and there's days for more kind of slower, lower intensity, or just like squeezing sets. And, I don't think it's a bad idea to have them pre-planned, mixed, but I think it makes a little more sense for me, at least, to actually kind of decide that once the lift starts, because then, any kind of unforeseen circumstance about my own prep, or like the way I slept, or maybe I like slept on my forearm weird or something else like that, can still come into play and kind of guide my workout toward, more of something that I'll, really get to enjoy on that specific day, rather than, just kind of having to predict, like, I think push downs and then ropes, I'll actually wait until the lift starts to kind of make those, not even predictions, just decisions, and then go from there, if you kind of feel me. But I think nothing else to say. Let's just get in there and get started. So I've been on a bit of a kick of sometimes, and not all muscle groups, but with some starting light and squeezing and then working my way up to more of a heavier set later, kind of phasing the workouts like brunt, if you could call it, in like sort of a slower slope. Whereas today, let's start off a little heftier. Of course, I've warmed up, 20s, 40s, 60s, 75s, so now I'm certainly ready to curl the 80s first. But sometimes I like starting with a heavier set, just hard, nasty, failure at, 10, 12, whatever. Because it just kind of, like, I don't have a scientific explanation here, right? But I can definitely say for sure that once the set is over, I don't know, just something about the kind of heft and damage that's been done with a heavy one. I feel like it lets me bring it harder on the lighter squeezing sets later, because they almost feel more necessary, because the heavier, more kind of like destructive, quote unquote, set has already been completed, and then all I can really do is just, focus on squeezing and burning on everything else, But I think let's just get a song playing and go nuts here. 15 reps would be cool. That would be a good number. Okay. Oh, okay. Whew. One more dose, and then move on to something a little lighter. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's do something lighter now. Those were good 2 heavy sets, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't need every set to be just like that. Let's grab some cables. Not exactly a light set, but I mean relatively lighter than those dumbbell curls were. So seated curls, and it's not that different from sitting here and doing like just a standing easy bar cable curl, but I'm definitely going to prefer to sit, mainly just because now I'm using less of my body to do the set, right? Standing, I'm kind of using more traps and lower back just to keep myself kind of upright. It's a little trickier to catch your breath, whereas if I could pop a squat, I'm stable right here. I barely have to even like keep the rest of my body tense just so I can do the act of a curl, and it kind of lets me be a little more, maybe efficient isn't the right word, but kind of direct with my focus, right? I'm not gonna be able to do a good set if I'm trying to, juggle a hacky sack at the same time. And obviously that's a total exaggeration, but I think the spirit of it kind of, plays around. If I was somebody who really needed to work my front delts, I'd probably do more seated pressing than I would standing overhead. Not to say it wouldn't work, but the amount of effort compared to, results of stimulation of the intended muscle group, I want that to be like 1-to-1. I don't want that to be an inefficient ratio. But let me get another song playing and get a good set here. And these 2 will be heavier, or this set will be a little heavier. I might end up, doing 2 heavy ones and then dropping it even by half and then doing light squeezing, burning ones. Or it's the same movement, but I would consider it a different set just because of the drastic difference of weight and kind of execution, if you catch me there. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's enough heavy ones. Let's make this next set a little lighter and squeezing. So instead of 250, let's go to 150. And these reps will look very different, much slower, much more controlled. But I don't know, that's the yin and yang of my style. I like them like that, and a little lighter, a little combination. All right. Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay. One more of those. Okay. 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 Alright. Let's do something else. And you're looking at it, I think. It should be in the background of this shot. But either way, let's get some cable preachers. A little bit, well, not even a little bit, a lot lighter than the previous sets. I guess except for those last two. And it's kind of exactly what I said. You know, from hitting some hard, heavy ones first, it's kind of making the lighter, squeezing ones that much more impactful, you know. Because if I were to grab the 20s fresh, I don't think I could get an awesome set out of it. It'd be too light. It would take too many reps to even like get that amount of fatigue out of it. But at the end of a whole workout, after you do some crazy heavy curls, dumbbell, cable, whatever, then I'm already kind of pre-exhausted and fatigued. You know, I'm sitting in a kind of a situation where I'm just not as physically able to exert that much force. Then the 20s are looking a little better, you know. So just a thought, right? But you can make the same argument backwards, where if you start with lighter squeezing movements, you get a better kind of like easing into the weights and the intensities of the sets, and then it makes you go harder on the heavier ones later because you're already kind of in the groove. You know, a lot of ways to swing it. As long as you're pumped at the end, I think you're doing something right. But let's get a good one here. And even though it's lighter, this is a little heavier for a light one. So the next one might be even lighter than this. All right. Two. Yeah. Two. Three. Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness. One more. Yeah. Two. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm running low battery wise, so I'll just show you the one set of ropes. But you know, pretty standard what I'll end up doing. Rope overhead, regular push downs, you know, nothing crazy fancy. And then we can cut to the actual, you know, kind of pose down at the end. Because out of everything, I mean, that's the cooler part I want to look back on. You know, not just an individual kind of set. So not to rob you of your tricep exposure for this arm day, but I guess that'll end up just being some regular Sam time. But as a starter, decently hefty rope, and I'll just go from there. Oh, goodness. All right. For you, I'll see you in 5 seconds. For me, I'll see you in like 30 minutes. Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, so all that ended up going down, rope extensions, easy bar pushdowns, a little bit of forearm curls, just single arm, kind of D-handle style, and then a few extra finishers of just some light squeezing dumbbell curls, just to really get some extra blood in here. But I think nothing else to say. Let's just get this shit freaking revealed. I've kind of been liking the sort of through the back reflection style, just because it ends up letting me really, kind of get a grasp of, what I'm looking at from a different angle. I'm always used to looking at myself just through the mirror. So if you ever get your tripod going and you see yourself in a video and it's from an angle you never normally see, odds are you're going to look a little bit freakier. But, that's for the camera to decide. Which I think 80% of the time makes you look cooler. Sometimes the limelight of whatever pump you're showing off is a little more like real life centric. But, sometimes you got to be there, right? And you can't recreate it just with the freaking camera. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And that was good. And then getting the extra garage lighting at the end. Nah, this is sweet. And the air is starting to get a little cooler, so it doesn't feel like I'm working out in a freaking sauna in here anymore. At least not as bad as it did during that freaking heat wave. But yeah, nothing else to discuss. Let's get out of here. Sick arm day. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that was a good one. Little, yeah. I was gonna say a little kind of lighter and quick, but it was only like that for the last couple of reps I did for triceps. Really, most of that beginning, especially bicep-wise, and some of the triceps with those heavy rope extensions and, quote-unquote heavy easy bar pushdowns. I say quotes because you're very strong on an easy bar or a straight bar pushdown, much more so than you're going to be with the rope. For one, just because it's so unstable, but it's just like a different kind of press. So when I say heavy, I mean like a good set of 15 kind of heavy, not like failure at 8 reps. Leg, excuse me, tricep pushdowns and leg extensions. The only reason I say leg extensions is because they're both kind of the same kind of movement. They're a bit tendony for me to say. I think they should be absolutely loaded like a freaking behemoth. And I've partially learned that the hard way just from having done it, but never to the point where I thought that I was actually like, thinking I was going to pull or like tweak anything in my elbow. But yeah, that was a good combo. I mean, that workout pretty much had everything. Heavy kind of sets, sub 10 reps, just about. Anything less than 8, I think, is a little bit too much. But that 8 to 12 area for a heavy set, I think that's pretty much the sweet spot we're all aiming for. And then, some lighter squeezing kind of stretch-based stuff, like those preachers and the, actually, I guess my bicep day wasn't very stretch-focused, compared to as much as it could have been. Like with dumbbell, kind of inclined bench curls, where your hands are literally like behind your back, kind of pulling yourself up. But yeah, even without those, still pumped to hell, And I'm okay with a lift that doesn't cover every base of every movement's, kind of like set style. Like I'm okay with an arm day that doesn't have a crazy bicep stretch and then a heavy and then a whatever, just because it's like on a lift by lift basis. I don't think that's the most important thing in the world. I think we fall into this trap of like, okay, I need to do a flat bench and an incline bench and a machine press and a pec fly and a cable fly and a dumbbell, whatever, purely because like, those are all the movements we know. So you're playing a Smash character you never played. You do your side B, side A, regular. Like it's kind of classic to spam things. Whereas, I think someone who's got a little bit more of a feel for like what really feels good on any given day is going to be able to say, holy crap, dumbbell curls feel nuts today. I'm used to how good they normally feel, but today it's extra wild. Holy crap. Dude. I better just sit here and spam these. And I've done that before. I'm talking an 8 set of curl bicep lift where it's just heavy curls, heavy curls, heavy curls, slightly lighter curls because now I'm getting too weak to lift whatever weight I was lifting before, on and on and on, kind of like that, right? So, not every lift is like that, but when some of them are, I'm not going to complain, right? If anything, simpler the better. You don't have any other kind of distractions to think about, or like having to work in with somebody if you're at like a regular private gym or anything else like that, or like a regular public gym. You can say, I'm just going to camp out right here for 8 sets. Dumbbells and cables are a little different. If you want to really just chill out on some of those, usually there's at least enough replacement movements so you're not like hogging something. I probably wouldn't recommend you sit on the dip machine of your Planet Fitness for 45 minutes straight, at least not without letting people work in, or like making it apparent that you're totally cool with people working in, like, don't let me hog this thing, because then you're just a real you're a real a-hole. Try to hold myself back from dropping that one. But yeah, solid lift. Playing now and when I go home, not totally sure. I know I'm going to eat a meal that's going to consist of somewhere around 50, 60 grams of protein, 30 of fats, and then like 100, maybe 150 of carbs. But exactly what that is going to be, I guess I'll just have to see more for once I actually step into the kitchen. And shit, that's almost the same thing as what I was talking about with the gym. I know the basic outline of what I'm going to eat, but I got to wait till I actually get in there and see what's available to really end up making that final decision. And not only what's available, but also just whatever I'm in the mood for. As much as we talk about bulking in off seasons as like, it's just for fuel, you're going to make it a lot easier on yourself if you're eating foods that not only you like, but that also, you can actually get down quick enough. If you catch yourself sitting at your plate just kind of picking at it, you're scrolling on your phone for like more than a moment or a few, like 30 seconds or so at a time between like decently sized bites, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? That's a situation that you do not want to be in. And I'm not talking about failure like a good failure like we're used to. I'm talking like, slowed weight gain, slowed off-season progress, slower gains in general, And that's not a situation that I want to be in. That's not a situation that I want to see anybody else be in, And I think I'll just leave it at that. But I've got legs tomorrow, so I'm going to make sure I'm extra well rested, and I want to make sure I go extra nuts. My last leg day was hams only, so that means my quads have had more than enough time to recuperate from their last squat session and everything else. So what that really means is it's like you're a 90s movie high school bully. That's me. And my quads are that, kind of nerdy kid who I'm just waiting to see pop into the hall. Let's just say this: no mercy. Right? That's the theme that I want to be very apparent tomorrow. But yeah, I think nothing else to discuss. I'll see you then.